My name is Bernice Holloway. I'm 68, retired, and used to believe that loyalty was something you could count on when it came to family, especially when it came to your only son. Last summer, my son Marcus came over to help me install a new TV bracket in the living room. He showed up smiling, calling me Ma, like he always did, hugging me a little longer than usual. Said it had been too long. I should have known something was off right then. We sat down at the table, and after a little chit-chat about his job and how stressful things were getting with his wife Denise, he looked me right in the eye and said, "Ma, I need a favor. Just something temporary. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing." Nat had that soft, coaxing tone he used when he was younger and wanted to borrow the car. "You know, I'd never ask if it wasn't serious," he said, rubbing his forehead like he had a migraine. "Denise's aunt passed. It's in Jamaica. We need to fly out and handle the estate stuff, and the flights aren't cheap." I didn't even blink. "How much?" I asked. He hesitated like he was embarrassed. "About 10, maybe 12,000. Just to cover the tickets, hotel, and..." He said the rest under his breath, like he didn't want to say the word resort too loud. I knew right then he was lying. But I didn't say that. Instead, I went into my bedroom, opened the little safe under my bed, and pulled out the envelope I keep for emergencies. I had been saving for years. A bit from my pension, a bit from Social Security, a lot from skipping things I needed. That money was supposed to cover dental work and help when the furnace finally gave out. I handed him $10,000 in cash. I told him to pay me back in 3 months. He hugged me tight again. "You saved our lives, Ma," he said. "You always do." That was the last time I saw him for a while. A week later, I saw a photo pop up on Facebook. Denise was wearing a wide-brimmed hat, holding a drink with a little umbrella. And the caption said, "Vacation mode. Activated." That drink didn't look like grief. They weren't in Jamaica for any funeral. They were in the Maldives, and that aunt who supposedly died. She was commenting on the post, saying, "Have fun, sweetie." I remember staring at the screen for a long time. My fingers felt stiff, like I couldn't move them. I closed the laptop, got up, and made myself some tea, but I didn't drink it. I sat at the kitchen table with the mug in my hands, watching the steam disappear. They didn't call, not for weeks. Not a thank you, not a check-in, nothing. I left 2 voicemails. The first one was calm. "Just wondering how things went with Denise's aunt. Hope you got there safe." The second one was short. "Call me." No response. By the 3rd week, I drove to the bank. When I got there, the clerk, a young girl named Marla, asked how she could help. I told her I wanted to check my accounts. She typed for a moment. Then she frowned. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Holloway." "Do you have another account?" "No," I said. "Just the retirement and the checking. Why?" She turned the monitor slightly. "Because your retirement savings account shows a 0 balance." I stared at the screen. "That's not possible." She showed me the transaction history. 2 large withdrawals, 1 online, 1 in person. The online one was routed to Marcus's name. I didn't say anything. Not to her. Not on the drive home. Not for 2 whole days. When I finally called Marcus, he answered like everything was fine. "Hey, Ma! Been meaning to call you." "You emptied my retirement." He didn't respond right away. Then he said, "Okay, let's not do this on the phone." "No, we'll do it now." "It wasn't what you think. I needed to You lied about Denise's aunt, about the trip, about everything. He sighed. Ma, I didn't want to worry you. We were behind on some stuff, okay? I figured I'd pay it back when... Don't? What? Don't call it a loan now. You stole from me. I didn't steal, Ma. You gave it to me. I gave you 10,000. You took 47 more. Silence. Then finally, it's just money. You still have the house. I said I'd help when I can. That's when I hung up. I didn't cry. Not right away. But that night, inside was a formal notice. Marcus Holloway was attempting to contest my new will. He had filed a request for judicial review claiming mental decline and undue influence by third parties. I read the document twice. Then I called Pauline. She had already received a copy. Don't worry, she said. We're ready. The court date was set for 2 weeks later. Small claims probate court. Local judge. Nothing high profile. But enough for Marcus to make one final attempt at undoing what I'd done. On the morning of the hearing, I arrived early. Pauline met me at the front steps. She was carrying a black binder full of documentation. My medical evaluation, all notarized signatures, bank records, the cease and desist letter, and every incident I had logged. I had even provided her with a scanned copy of the notebook I had kept. Marcus arrived 20 minutes late, wearing a wrinkled blazer and no tie. Denise came with him, sitting 2 rows behind during the hearing. Neither of them looked at me directly. The judge asked basic questions. I answered each one clearly. I explained the timeline. I presented the bank fraud, the unauthorized withdrawals, the police welfare check, the utility sabotage, and the final attempts to access my accounts. I presented the notarized will and the medical report confirming my full cognitive health. When Marcus's lawyer tried to argue that I was emotionally manipulated by an aggressive legal strategy, Pauline calmly presented all the signed documents and reminded the court that Marcus Holloway had never filed a police report to claim his mother was unfit, only requested a welfare check anonymously. After 35 minutes, the judge ruled. Petition to contest denied. The will stands as filed. Marcus didn't speak as he left the courtroom. Neither did Denise. Outside the courthouse, I stood with Pauline. She asked if I wanted to speak to them. I shook my head. That afternoon, I stopped by the South Haven Women's Support Center. I hadn't been there in a long time, but the moment I walked in, one of the volunteers, a young woman named Clarice, recognized me. She led me to the director's office. They didn't know yet, of course. The paperwork was still being processed, but I explained what I had done. The director looked at me and said, "You have no idea how many lives this is going to help." I nodded once. It was never about the money. She asked if I wanted a plaque or a dedication. I said no. I told her, just use it, feed people, get beds, buy heaters. Before I left, Clarice walked me back to the lobby. She said, "You look tired, but strong." I said, "I am." That night, I went home, made a simple dinner, and sat in silence. No phone calls came, no emails, no apologies. But that was fine, because I had done exactly what needed to be done. I didn't win. I just stopped losing. The attempt to discredit me through a welfare check, the attempted bribe via Denise, and now the sabotage of utilities. It was clear, professional, and legally binding. I had it mailed to Marcus's address by certified post. By Thursday, I had confirmation he'd signed for it. The following day, someone pounded on my door again. This time, I didn't open it. I looked through the side window and saw Marcus standing there with the letter in his hand, his mouth moving fast even though I couldn't hear him. He rang the bell twice, then knocked again. When I didn't come, he yelled, "You're really doing this? Over money." I stayed where I was. He kept yelling, "You think a shelter's gonna remember you when you're gone? I'm your son." Then he kicked the bottom of the screen door and walked away. The next morning, I bought a new lock. Then I called the security company and had them install a camera over the front door. The man who did the job was quiet and efficient. He showed me how to use the app and set up alerts. I asked him if he thought I was being paranoid. He shook his head. Not at all. You'd be surprised how many calls we get like this. Family turning on each other when money gets involved. That night, I sat at the table and looked at my notebook again. It was full now. Nearly every line covered with times, dates, interactions. I had documented everything. I flipped to the very first page, where I had written the words, Step 1, take back control. Then I flipped to the back cover and added one more. Step 4, finish what you started. And I wasn't going to stop now. The day I found out Marcus tried to access my bank accounts again was the day I finalized everything. It was a Tuesday. I had received a fraud alert from the bank's security department. Someone had tried to reset the password on my online profile 3 times within 1 hour. They had also attempted to request a new debit card using an old address I hadn't lived at in 5 years. The same address Marcus and Denise used to rent when they were still in their first apartment. The bank flagged it immediately and froze the request. They notified me and locked my account as a precaution. I knew who it was. I didn't need proof. I called Pauline again. "I want to finish everything," I told her. "No more waiting. No more hoping he'll stop." We scheduled the final will, signing for Thursday morning. She offered to have it notarized on site and make copies for official storage. I agreed. That night, I cleaned the house. I'm not sure why. Something in me felt like it needed to be done. I cleared off the bookshelf in the living room. I took down the family photos, one by one. There were old frames with pictures of Marcus as a child. One of him holding a toy truck in the backyard, another from his high school graduation, a photo of me, him, and Harold, the year before Harold passed. I didn't cry. I just wrapped each photo in paper and placed them in a box. I labeled the box, Personal Storage. I wasn't throwing them out. I just didn't need to see them every day. Thursday morning came fast. I arrived at Pauline's office 10 minutes early. She was already there sitting behind her desk, with 2 copies of the final will, the signed notarization documents, and a sealed envelope with a personal copy for me. She stood when I walked in. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded. She walked me through each page. We reviewed the assets, house, car, savings, the small stock account I had from the telephone company I worked at 30 years ago. All of it was now directed to the South Haven Women's Support Center. A few specific personal items were left for 2 neighbors, Mrs. Crawford and Mr. Whitaker, people who'd checked on me regularly without asking for anything in return. As for Marcus, there was nothing, not even a line in the will. I signed each page carefully. After the final signature, she placed the documents into a sealed folder. "I'll file it today," she said, "and I'll keep 1 copy in the office. The rest is yours." I took the folder and thanked her. Before I left, she said something I won't forget. "You didn't erase him. You just stopped letting him control the ending." I drove home, put the sealed envelope in the fireproof box under my bed, and poured myself a cup of tea. It was quiet, still. 3 days later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from a law firm. Not Pauline's. You're talking about my son. The officers exchanged a glance. Is there anyone else in the house right now? No. I live alone. I'm retired, and I'm not confused. Would you mind if we came in just for a moment? I opened the door and let them in. They looked around, took note of the calendar on the wall, the neat stack of bills on the table, the dishes drying on the rack. Nothing out of place. One officer asked, "Do you take any medications for cognitive issues?" "No. I take blood pressure meds. That's it." He nodded. "Everything seems fine here. Next time." I said, "You can tell Bernice Holloway to stop wasting your time." The officer gave a slight nod. "Have a good evening, ma'am." After they left, I locked the door and wrote a new line in my notebook. Friday, 7:15 p.m. Police welfare check. Claimed concern for mental state. Assumed Marcus filed it. Escalating behavior. Stay alert. Then I added a second line. Contact lawyer False reports. I was done warning them. Next, I'd show them what consequences really looked like. The morning after the police came, I called Pauline again. She didn't pick up right away, but 5 minutes later she called me back from her personal number. "I spoke to a contact at the precinct," she said. "They confirmed your name came up in a third-party welfare concern. They won't name the source, but we both know who made that call." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "What do we do now?" "We document it," she said. "This is a tactic. He's trying to build a case to have you declared unstable, or at least make it seem like your financial decisions are being made irrationally. He's trying to say I'm not in my right mind." "Exactly. If he files anything in court, contesting the will, he'll try to argue diminished capacity. That's why this visit from the police matters." I was quiet. Then she added, "I think it's time we get in front of this." By noon, Pauline had emailed me a form. It was a formal letter requesting a cognitive evaluation with an independent medical professional. She said we'd use it to solidify the current legal documents in case Marcus made a move. "Do it soon," she said. "Not because we doubt you, but because he will." I booked the appointment the next day. The doctor was young, polite, and thorough. We spent nearly an hour going over questions, memory exercises, hypothetical scenarios, and basic recall. When he finished, he said, "You're as sharp as anyone I've seen in your age bracket." That same evening, I received the evaluation by email and printed it out. I added it to my folder along with the bank records, legal documents, and the updated will. Everything was organized by date, with labeled tabs. At this point, I wasn't just reacting, I was preparing. That weekend passed without any calls from Marcus or Denise, but Sunday night something else happened. Around 8:30 p.m., I was watching a game show in the living room when the lights flickered. Then the whole house went dark. No power. I went to the breaker box. Nothing had tripped, so I stepped outside and saw that my neighbors still had their lights on. It was just me. I called the electric company. After being on hold for almost 20 minutes, someone finally answered and told me there had been a request for service disconnection at my address. I asked who requested it. They said, "Your son." I nearly dropped the phone. "He's not authorized on my account," I said. "He was," the woman replied. "He was added as an authorized user back in 2019. That was my mistake. I added him back then when I was having a rough patch after surgery. I'd forgotten to remove him since. The woman on the phone apologized, restored the power, and marked the account as restricted. Only I could make changes going forward. I hung up, walked back into the living room, and sat down in the dark for a minute before the lights clicked back on. Then I got up and started writing again in my notebook. Sunday, 8:52 p.m., power cut. Electric company confirms Marcus authorized disconnection. His access has been removed. This is harassment. The next day, I called Pauline again. She didn't even let me finish before saying, "That's enough. I'm filing a formal cease and desist. Letter. From here forward, no contact. If they try anything else, we go to court." She drafted the letter that afternoon. It outlined everything. The unauthorized transactions. I stepped aside, though every part of me wanted to leave her standing there. She walked in like she'd been here 1,000 times, even though she hadn't stepped foot inside since Thanksgiving. I watched as she sat down on the same couch Marcus had the day before, setting her purse down like she was preparing for a business meeting. "I heard you and Marcus talked yesterday," she started. I nodded once. "I want to clear the air," she said, crossing one leg over the other. "I know things got out of hand. I know he made some mistakes." "Mistakes?" She adjusted her sunglasses but didn't remove them. "He wasn't trying to hurt you. You raised a good man. He's just been under pressure." "Pressure to steal from me?" she exhaled. "We weren't thinking straight. I told him it was wrong. I really did. But he panicked. Bills piled up. The mortgage, the card balances, none of which are my responsibility." Denise reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. She laid it on the coffee table. "What's that?" I asked. "An offer?" she said. "I didn't touch it." She opened the folder and slid one page toward me. It was a draft agreement. A repayment plan. Marcus's name was typed at the bottom. "We want to make this right," she said. "If you revoke the will change, we'll start paying you back monthly. $1,000. Every first Friday of the month." I didn't pick up the paper. I didn't even lean closer. She waited. Then I said, "You want to make this right, but only if I undo my decision." She paused, then said, "This is just a fair compromise." "Let me ask you something, Denise," I said. "When you two were at that resort, posting pictures in cabanas and holding cocktails, did you feel even 1 second of guilt? I didn't know where the money came from until afterward. And once you did, I told him to stop. But you didn't return a penny." She didn't answer. I stood up and walked to the window. "You know, it's funny," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Marcus took the money, but you're the one here trying to fix it." Denise stood up too, because I know how he gets. He shuts down. He avoids things until they collapse. I didn't want this to collapse. I told him this would happen. I turned and looked her straight in the eye. It didn't collapse. I took it back. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "No more explanations. No more printed offers. You had a chance to make things right before any papers were signed. Now they are. And it's done." She stepped back. "So that's it?" I nodded. You don't take from people and expect them to keep the door open. Her face changed then. Something shifted. She crossed her arms. "You think giving everything to a shelter is noble? They'll burn through that money in 6 months. Meanwhile, your own blood is out here trying to build a life." "That's not my concern anymore." "You'd really rather die with strangers holding your name than see your family get a second chance?" "I'd rather not die being lied to by people who only see me as a wallet." She stared at me, and I stared back. Then she grabbed her purse and marched toward the door. Before opening it, she turned back. "You're not just punishing Marcus, you know. You're punishing your future. No one's going to remember you for this. You'll just fade away." I stayed silent. She opened the door and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. I sat back down. picked up the repayment offer and slowly tore it in half. Then I put the pieces in the trash under the sink. Afterward, I called Pauline. I told her about Denise's visit and the pressure she tried to apply. "She brought a payment plan?" Pauline asked. I told her yes. "Don't respond to it," she said. "Anything from here forward should go through me. Legally, it's settled. Emotionally, I understand it's not." I thanked her and hung up. The rest of the day passed quietly, until around 6:45 p.m., when the police came. A patrol car pulled up to the curb. I was in the kitchen when I saw the lights through the window. I stepped outside before they could ring the bell. "Mrs. Holloway?" one of the officers asked. "Yes?" "We received a welfare concern call from a family member. They said you might be in some kind of danger or experiencing confusion." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "They were worried about your mental state. Said there's been erratic behavior, unusual decisions regarding your finances." I let out a breath. I sat down across from him and crossed my arms. "Why did you come here, Marcus?" He sighed. "I heard from someone you changed your will." I stayed quiet. He looked up. "Is it true?" "Who told you that?" "Denise said she saw something. In the mail. A packet from a law office. She was here last week to drop off that quilt you wanted her to return. Remember?" I didn't respond. I did remember asking Denise, weeks before the fallout, to return a quilt I'd loaned her when she was sick. I didn't know she'd actually dropped it off. I certainly didn't expect her to go through my mail. "So what? You're cutting me out of everything?" he asked. "Just like that?" I raised an eyebrow. "You emptied my retirement." "I made a mistake." "No. You made a plan. You moved money. You used my login. You forged my signature at the branch. Don't call it a mistake just because I noticed." He leaned back and let out a heavy breath. "You're punishing me." "No, Marcus. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference." We sat in silence for a long time. I could hear the clock ticking behind me. Finally, he asked, "What did you do with the money? What's left of it?" "None of your business." "Ma, come on." "No, that's it. I let you in today because I wanted to see how far you'd go. I wanted to hear if you'd at least try to tell the truth. But all you've done is twist it around like I'm the one who broke something." He stood up suddenly. "You think I'm some kind of monster?" "I think you're a grown man who robbed his mother." He froze. I stood up too. "This house? Not yours. The accounts? Not yours. The life I built? Not yours." He shook his head and started pacing. "You don't understand how hard it is right now. You sit here in this house like nothing's changed. But out there, everything's harder than it used to be. I got bills. I got responsibilities. And you think I didn't?" He stopped walking. "I worked double shifts when you were a baby. I cleaned other people's bathrooms to keep the lights on in this house. I went without dental work for 6 years because you needed braces. So don't talk to me about hard. You're not the first person to struggle." He looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. Then he tried another approach. "Okay. So tell me what you want me to do. Just name it. I'll do it." I shook my head. "It's not about what you can do now. It's about what you already did. You crossed a line, and I've made arrangements so that you won't get another chance to do it again." His jaw tightened. "So that's it? You're just gonna cut me out completely?" "No," I said, walking over to the small drawer under the end table. I pulled out a sheet of paper. It was a copy of the letter I wrote to go with the updated will. I handed it to him. "You're not being cut out. You're being replaced." He unfolded the letter and read it silently. I watched his eyes move across the page. Halfway through, he shook his head and let out a bitter laugh. "You're giving it to some shelter?" "Yes." "To strangers?" "To women who won't steal from me." He folded the letter up roughly and shoved it back on the table. "This is unreal." "What's unreal is that you thought you'd get away with it." He stared at me for a long time. Then, quieter, he asked, "Does Denise know?" "Not yet, but she will." He walked to the door, stopped, and turned back. "You're gonna regret this." I didn't move. He opened the door and left without saying goodbye. When I sat back down, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel triumph. I felt tired. I opened my notebook and added a new entry. Thursday, 11:45 a.m. Marcus came to the house. Confronted about the will. Confirmed Denise read legal mail. Threatened consequences. Response: none. Stay firm. Then I closed the book and turned on the kettle. I wasn't finished yet, but I had taken back the first piece. The next morning started off quiet. I was in the kitchen putting away dishes from the drying rack when I noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street. It wasn't Marcus's sedan. This one was a silver SUV. Newer, shinier. I didn't think much of it until my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood Denise. She wore oversized sunglasses, even though it was cloudy, and held a to-go cup in one hand. Her other hand clutched the strap of a designer purse I knew, so cost more than my first car. She didn't smile. "Morning," she said. I didn't reply right away. "Can I come in?" I used to keep the password on a sticky note under the keyboard. I know I shouldn't have, but... She waved that off. "It's common. Unfortunately, that's probably what he used." "What are my options?" She looked me in the eye. "If we report this, he can be investigated for financial elder abuse. We can freeze any joint accounts if your name is still attached, file for restitution through civil court, and in some cases we can request a protective order to prevent him from accessing your financial info again." I stayed quiet. "He's your son," she added. "But he broke the law." I didn't reply right away. Then I asked, "Can I update my will through you too?" Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Yes." "You want to exclude him?" "I want him out of everything. He'll learn about it the same way he stole from me. Quietly, without warning." She nodded. "We can draft a new one today." We spent another hour going over the old document, the one where Marcus was listed as the sole beneficiary. I had left him everything: the house, the car, the savings, even the small jewelry box, with the wedding ring I'd stopped wearing years ago. I told Pauline to remove his name completely. "Who should receive your estate instead?" she asked. I paused. Then I said, "The South Haven Women's Support Center." She raised her pen. "All of it?" "Yes." I explained that I'd volunteered there for 6 months before the pandemic, helped organize food drives, folded clothes, cleaned shelves. I'd seen older women there, ones like me, women who had been tossed aside by their kids, their grandkids. One of them, Miss Alma, had spent Christmas alone on a cot in the back of the center with only a thermos of coffee and a paperback novel. I remember giving her a blanket I had crocheted years ago. She cried, said no one had ever made anything for her before. Pauline wrote it all down. "Do you want him notified?" "Only after I pass, not a second before." She nodded again. After we signed the new draft, she slid the envelope toward me. "You don't owe me an explanation," she said. "But if you ever feel guilty, remember, you didn't do this to him. He did this to himself." I drove home with that envelope in my purse, and the kind of stillness I hadn't felt in weeks. Not peace. Not yet. But control. That night, Marcus called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Ma, listen. I know you're upset, but I can explain everything. Denise didn't even know I was using that account. I didn't want to tell you because I thought you'd panic. But it wasn't malicious. You know me. I'd never hurt you. Just call me back. Please. I deleted the message. Then I opened my notebook again and wrote one more line. Step 2. Wait, it was 3 days after I signed the new will when Marcus showed up unannounced. It was a Thursday. I had just finished sweeping the front porch and was bringing in the broom when I heard knocking at the front door. Not tapping, knocking. Firm. Loud enough for the whole block to hear. I peeked through the curtain before opening. It was him, standing there with that same posture he used to have when he got caught skipping school. Hands in his jacket pockets, head tilted slightly, trying to look harmless. I opened the door, but only halfway. I didn't step aside to let him in. Ma, he said, like that word still meant something. You didn't call first. I figured you'd block me again, he replied, then quickly added, I just wanted to talk. Please. I stood still for a moment, then stepped back and motioned toward the living room. He walked in, slow and cautious, glancing around like he expected everything to be different. But the house looked the same as it always had. Couch with the throw pillows I'd made. End table with Harold's old lamp. The same carpet with the stain he caused when he spilled grape soda at his graduation party 15 years ago. He sat on the edge of the armchair and rubbed his hands together. Look, Ma, I know you're mad. I'm not mad, I said. I'm done. He blinked at that. Come on, you know I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't hurt me, Marcus. You made a decision. You took money I worked for and decided you deserved it more than I did. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. He looked down at his shoes. White sneakers. Clean. New. Things got tight, he said. I was going to pay you back. With what? I've got some things lined up. What things? He didn't answer, sir. When I went into my bedroom and opened that empty safe, where the envelope used to sit, I felt something break. It wasn't about the money. It was about what he saw when he looked at me. A bank, a safety net, a woman too old and too tired to fight back. He was wrong about that last part, and he was about to learn. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wasn't going to let him bury me while I was still breathing. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing the refrigerator hum in the kitchen and the occasional car pass outside. Every few hours I checked the time. 1:12 a.m., 3:09, 5:36. I kept replaying Marcus's voice in my head. It's just money. That was all it was to him. Not the hours I worked cleaning motel bathrooms after my husband passed. Not the years I went without new shoes so he could have brand-name sneakers. Not the meals I skipped so the light bill wouldn't be late. I got up before the sun and made a list. I used the yellow legal pad I keep in the drawer under the microwave. That notepad used to hold grocery lists and Sunday dinner menus. Now it held a different kind of list. Names, dates, bank account numbers, passwords. The contact for Mr. Herman, my old tax consultant. The phone number for a woman named Evelyn Shaw, who used to handle pension disputes at the credit union. And I wrote one other name, Pauline Hart. She wasn't family. She was a lawyer. But she was the only person who ever helped me when the VA lost Harold's benefit paperwork after he died. That was 12 years ago. She'd written one letter, made 2 phone calls, and the whole thing got straightened out. I still had her number saved in an old flip phone I keep for emergencies. At 9:03 a.m. sharp, I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Pauline Hart speaking. "Miss Hart? This is Bernice Holloway." There was a pause. Then her voice warmed a little. "Well, that's a name I haven't heard in a while. How are you, Mrs. Holloway?" "Not great." "All right. Tell me what's going on." I told her everything. No emotion. Just facts. The $10,000 I handed over. The $47,000 Marcus transferred without my consent. The online login. The in-person withdrawal I never made. She didn't interrupt me once. When I finished, I waited. She asked, "Do you have any documentation? Paper trails, screenshots, bank statements?" "Yes." I printed everything. "Okay. You need to bring it in?" "I'll set aside time today." This sounds like a mix of elder, financial abuse, and possible identity misuse. I didn't correct her. I didn't say, "He's my son." I just said, "I'll be there at noon." After we hung up, I made a second pot of coffee. I didn't drink the first one. My hands had been too shaky earlier. I poured a cup, sat down at the table, and flipped through the printed statements I got from the bank yesterday. The transfers were there, clear as day. The withdrawal dates, the account it was sent to. His name was right on the routing info. I highlighted every transaction he made since June. He had been doing it slowly, little chunks at a time. He hadn't just taken it once and disappeared. He had been chipping away for weeks, maybe months. At 11:20, I got dressed. Slacks, flats, cardigan, simple and presentable. I printed out copies of everything and slipped them into a folder. Then I took the folder and the notebook, locked up the house, and drove to Pauline's office in South Haven. It's a one-story red brick building sandwiched between a bakery and an insurance agency. No big law firm logo, just a wooden sign that says Hart Legal Services. She was waiting in the front when I walked in, still wore her hair short and natural. Same navy suit I remembered. "Come in, Mrs. Holloway," she said, and walked me down the hall to her office. Her desk was cluttered with papers, law books, and a half-empty cup of soup. I sat down and opened the folder. We spent the next hour going over everything. She took notes while I talked. When I explained how Marcus used the emergency fund I kept hidden in my safe, she raised an eyebrow. Did he know the safe combination? No. But the safe was open the day he came to fix the TV bracket. I left it open after counting the money the night before. That was my mistake. She didn't say anything about that, just kept writing. After I finished, she leaned back in her chair and said, "He accessed your account online. Was your login saved somewhere?" I nodded.